There's no denying that Steven Spielberg in the 90s was unstoppable. Hit after hit franchise made Spielberg the face of the film industry, and he could pretty much do whatever he wanted. At that same time, the world of celebrity-backed themed restaurants was booming, with celebrity-vested restaurants like Planet Hollywood blowing up to over 60 locations worldwide. Each one of these restaurants had unique themes that immersed diners in wacky and wild worlds. The food was lacking and upcharged, but that wouldn't matter because you were basically in a small theme park. Spielberg, with his longtime collaborator and producer Jeffrey Katzenberg, would throw their hats in the ring with Dive, a short-lived submarine-themed submarine sandwich restaurant, which is described by Zagat as having so many bells and whistles it was like eating in a pinball machine. The 11,000 square feet of restaurant was covered in pipes, pressure gauges, airlock doors, and portholes, and the restaurant mimicked being underwater through digital displays that would give guests a glimpse at sharks and other various sea creatures. Dive, like other more obscure and less popular themed restaurants, has kind of faded into obscurity, probably to the joy of Steven Spielberg. So without further ado, let's delve a bit deeper into Dive and figure out what made it so weird and why it was such a massive failure. In order to tell this story properly, we have to go back to the 90s. Sylvester Stallone and Arnold were taking the world by storm with Planet Hollywood, and soon everyone and their grandmother got into the themed restaurant business. Famous dead bigot Hulk Hogan even opened a pasta restaurant with dishes that had names he couldn't pronounce correctly.
And I've eaten so many Hulkaroos and Hulkayoos.
The world was ablaze and people really wanted to not just eat, but also have an experience. Maybe I'm dining on Mars, or in a rainforest, or in a restaurant themed around the business Forrest Gump started in honor of his fallen pal Bubba who died in the Vietnam War. Either way, these are making a pretty penny at the time, so of course other folks within the film industry would try to capitalize. Jeffrey Katzenberg, hot off the presses of spearheading the Disney Renaissance, and Steven Spielberg, who just went through one of the craziest years of his life, making both Jurassic Park and Schindler's List, would decide to dip their toes in the themed restaurant industry. These guys couldn't be in a more better position to make rash and passionate investment decisions, and that they did. Spielberg thought that Los Angeles lacked a good sub-restaurant and sought to combine his love for the ocean and Jules Verne's 2,000 Leagues Under the Sea with his love of sub sandwiches. So the obvious decision was to make a multi-million-dollar restaurant themed around a submarine so you could eat a sub in a sub. Spielberg was also the executive producer of SeaQuest DSV, which was essentially a nautical version of Star Trek, which just so happened to also star Roy Schneider, who you might know as Chief Brody from Jaws. The show ran throughout the lifetime of Dive, so I wouldn't be surprised if this wasn't some kind of submarine-based brand synergy. Maybe Spielberg thought the next new craze was subaquatic naval journeys, like kids would be daydreaming about being trapped in a metal box with no escape. I do understand, however, the intrigue because I was that kid. I was weirdly obsessed with 2,000 Leagues Under the Sea, partially due to the hype of the new retheming of Disneyland's submarine voyage into the Nemo ride. My parents would talk legend of how awesome the original attraction was, and this somehow spiraled me into becoming obsessed with the 1954 film based off the book. My parents wrongfully assumed the Disneyland version was themed around 2,000 Leagues Under the Sea, but I didn't really care. I just loved that big old squid attacking that submarine. I thought that was so cool. It was one of my many weird obsessive phases, which you guys now are a part of by supporting this YouTube channel, so thanks. Jeff and Steven would team up with restaurateur Larry Levy to get the restaurant funded and built. Larry's company, Levy Restaurants, brought fine dining to stadiums like Wrigley Field in the 90s, as well as various restaurants at Walt Disney World. Steven would hide his involvement from the restaurant, maybe out of shame, or maybe because a submarine-themed restaurant distracts from the more important things like winning multiple Academy Awards that same year for a film about a very, very dark topic, but they would eventually begrudgingly use his name in order to fund the $8 million construction costs. There's probably no better way to get a restaurant funded than having it be backed by one of the most famous filmmakers of the last century, which would give Dive a ton of hype and press surrounding its opening. And before the Century City Mall had the Holy Gates, which we call Din Tai Fung, they got the very first Dive location, which opened in May of 1994 in a location right across from the AMC Century 14. Fun fact, the Century City Mall might have one of the worst parking lot experiences in all of Los Angeles, which is also a huge problem when the restaurant opened because just a ton of people were flocking to check it out, and this made the parking lot even worse.
You want out of this parking lot? Okay.
Would there be anything else?
Yes, do you have a Miss Piggy?
This mall is well known for hosting various publicity stunts. Like recently they just did this Fortnite one where Homer Simpsons were running around everywhere. And every store and restaurant in the mall is usually at the height of their popularity. They're all super trendy. So this makes sense to me that this was the location chosen for the first dive. They would recruit chef Michael Northern to spearhead the eclectic menu that would feature a wide variety of starters, salads, wood-roasted entrees, bread bowls with a selection of soups and stews, and of course, subs. The sandwiches varied from totally normal options like chicken salad subs in Turkey to other more creative options like soft-shell crab sandwiches. They would often swap out and experiment with new sub creations, meaning you never really knew which subs would be available each time you went. Also, according to rumors, Steven Spielberg and Jeffrey Katzenberg were fans of soaked subs, like subs that are soaked in some sort of juice or sauce, and often complained about subs being too dry. So most of the subs on the dive menu were soaked and kind of soggy, I guess. I don't think every single sandwich was a complete slop fest, but there is something kind of funny about going out on a date and chowing down on a soggy sub with your girl inside of a goofy, whimsical submarine. The inside of the restaurant was fully decked out, immersing dining guests into the claustrophobic world of subnautical travel. Gauges and pipes lined every wall, and portholes were everywhere. Groaning metal sounds were piped through to simulate the deep pressure that the submarine was undergoing, and screens were simulating the depths of the sea and the various sea creatures that would swim by. Radars were on small monitors scattered about, and large sci-fi-esque electrical equipment hung over guests' heads. The weirdest thing that they had in there, in my opinion, is this conveyor belt that would hang a fish with glowing red eyes on it, and it would just like rotate around the restaurant. I still haven't figured out why that's there or what's the reasoning behind it. Is it like the fish that is going into the sandwiches? Are they robot fish? I just want to know. I like it, but it's weird. Similar to a rainforest cafe, every 45 minutes the submarine would rise from the sea in a new and wacky location, which guests could view from the screens around the restaurant. Sometimes you'd emerge to find sea monsters or mermaids, or you would emerge in some old dude swimming pool. They really leaned into the 90s tackiness with this. I just love when the economy was good enough for silly stuff like this to happen. The emergence would be indicated by flashing lights and alarm noises and water filling the portholes. Also similar to Rainforest Cafe, it was also sure to distract and interrupt whatever conversation you might be having. Imagine a wife telling her husband she wants a divorce, only to get interrupted by the submarine's loud horn, all while slapping down your soaked softshell crab classic sub. If you wanted to get your divorce started on the right foot, you could make your way down to the dive gear store where they sold various clothing items themed around the restaurant, with such highlights as a $500 leather special edition jacket or a $55 dive themed watch. The merch is something that these restaurants rely on heavily, with them expecting 50% of their profits coming from it. Dive was an immense failure in this department, and I can kind of see why. All of this merch was trying really hard to come off as cool and hip, and it wasn't appealing to the demographic who gets merch from themed restaurants, kids. But it wasn't like Dive was a failure off the bat. In fact, Dive was a huge success, with guests flocking to get a taste of those sloppy subs. This sparked hype around investors, and they plan to expand Dive to over 60 locations in the recent future, with places like New York, London, Tokyo, Atlanta, and San Francisco on their crosshairs. Vegas would get a larger Dive location opening in June of 1995, a full year later after the original. Same as LA, the Vegas location would welcome tons of people through its iron doors, but after the dust settled, two things were clear. One, people were not repeat diners at Dive, with most of the guests showing up to check it out and never coming back. And two, they couldn't get people to buy the damn merchandise. So once the fad of themed restaurants slowly started to die out towards the early 2000s, LA was in trouble. LA in its first year only managed to take 15% of its sales from merch, and Vegas had more success at 40%, but it was clear that the LA version was going to be on the chopping block. And sadly, Dive LA closed its doors in January of 1999, with the Vegas one lasting a year longer, closing in 2000. Dive was for sure a product of its time, a world where people threw tons of cash at really dumb investments that silly people like you and me could go and enjoy. Sadly, all I can do now is sit at the Century City Din Tai Fung and think about how much fun I could be having sucking the juice out of my softshell crab sub under the beautiful lights of a submarine siren. I hope one day we do come full circle on the themed restaurant thing and we get more weird ones like this. I love themed restaurants. I think they're so weird. The T-Rex Cafe in Florida is weird. The last remaining rainforest cafes are weird. None of these pop-up stuff though. I'm talking permanent. We're going all in investments like they were in the 90s. I think it would be a ton of fun. Also, comment below if you could make a themed restaurant, what would it be themed about? Me personally, I think I would do like a Wild West themed kind of restaurant, but like make it like an outdoor inside kind of thing. Like you're sitting around the like open stretch of the town. I think that'd be kind of cool. And then they could do like duels in the middle of the restaurant. I think that'd be a ton of fun. But anyway, guys, thank you guys so much for watching this video. We are officially back making videos. It has been a crazy last month for me, and thank you guys for bearing with me. I really do appreciate you guys, and I hope you like this video. Please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Subscribing is the best way you can help support the show. It really makes my day and just keeps me going with all this stuff. But thank you guys so much, and I'll check you guys out in the next one. Peace. Bye-bye.